So my guess is that a rabbit got in here and it basically met its end. And then a coyote or a wildcat or something came along and took it. Hey, it's Greg here with Outdoors on the Cheap, and this is part 3 of my video series on rabbit snaring this year. It's been a number of days actually. It's been about 3 days since I checked the snares. I just had some other stuff to do. I actually went and did an overnighter out in the woods and just did some hunting and stuff like that in a different part of the province. I took some video footage of that, so I'll share that with you too once I get around to editing that. But today I'm just out for just about an hour sort of thing, back in the woods, about 2 hours maybe, just checking the snare. So I thought I'd show you just some follow-up on some of the things I've been doing out here. So if you recall in the first video, I had something here that looked like a rabbit trail, but I wasn't sure. I thought it might be a porcupine trail. And what I've done is I put some spruce boughs down, some freshly cut yellow birch spruce boughs. If that's on the edge of a rabbit trail and rabbits go by it, they eat the tips off the buds. They can't resist. So when you're snaring with no snow, that's a surefire way to A, sort of bait them in, but even just if you're sort of, it's sort of like a poor man's trail cam, right? Because if they're around, they'll stop, they'll nip off the ends, and they'll probably have a little poop while they're at it. So this one end here is cut off, but that was the case days ago. Nothing has changed. Basically, nothing has nibbled on any aspect of this. And if this was a rabbit trail that was being used regularly, it's probably been 5 days since I laid that down. Boy, something would have been here. Maybe even 6 days. Anyway, something would have been here at this. So I'm inclined to think that this is a porcupine trail, not a rabbit trail, and maybe one that's not used that often, because even though it's well defined from my perspective, what I can see here, there's no sign of scat of any kind, and they're just leaving this here bait alone. An irresistible bait, basically. This is like catnip to a rabbit. So I'm glad I didn't take the time to set a snare here. Would have been a waste of time. So here's a spot where I actually got a rabbit a number of days ago. It's the only spot I've got a rabbit in. And I reset the snare. The rabbit had been in. And I didn't do a very good job of resetting it. And I can tell just from looking at it here today that something basically pushed it out of the way, or that in essence this snare failed when something went through here. So this is a good rabbit trail and they use it. But I need to basically toss the snare. It's just, eventually the snare, they have a degree of memory, and learning to work wire and work with it and get it to sort of obey your wishes is an art in and of itself. It takes practice and takes time. That's why, you'll read in survival manuals, they'll say, oh, you can use a snare to snare rabbits, but it takes practice to get good at it. And the thing about snares is they can only be used so many times. Sometimes when you get a rabbit in a snare, you can sort of straighten it out and reuse it. And sometimes it's just almost beyond hope. It just will not return to its original state. And that also depends on the kind of wire you're using. Some wires I find are very easy to reshape and reuse, and some brands of wire, this one in particular, seems to once you get it kinked, you can sort of, it's challenging to reset it. I mean, see how it's got a bit of a, it's hard to see here, but it just wants to fold over like that. It just does not want to obey. So I'm going to toss that snare and set another one here because it seems like a good spot. All right, that one's all reset. And while I'm doing this, for those of you that are sort of new to this, you do everything you can not to step on the rabbit trail, especially when there's snow down, because it can throw them off and redirect them and just change their modus operandi, right? Just change the way they're doing everything. It can throw them off. So you never step on the rabbit trail. Always step over it, step around it, sort of thing. Try to keep the rabbit trail just the way they left it, right? They seem to be, they run on instinct, and they know when something's off. Let's put it that way, right? And since there was action on this trail, and since the snare was moved, and since I've already gotten one here, I decided to set a second one. So this is the same run, sort of following here. You can even, well, there was some, I don't know where it is now, but a little bit of rabbit poop. Anyway, I set another one right over here, about 6 feet away. If you've got a really good run and you're getting stuff on it, it's always good to double up. Instead of having a whole bunch of snares all over the place, if you had half as many, instead of having, like, if you're going to set 12 snares, if you have good runs, you should put 2 on each good run. Because think about the rabbit that pushed that one out of the way. That one might have got him, right? So that's always a good thing. Now, you don't want to exhaust an area, right? But yeah, it's good to double up. So this is very interesting. So this is a spot here where, I've gotten rabbits before, and I've seen plenty of sign here when there's snow, and there's like a rabbit trail here. And basically, in all the years I've been here, 10 years, this is a spot where there's always rabbit activity. Now, I didn't see any really obvious sign, so I just cut tops off of 3 yellow birch. Again, the most irresistible food for a rabbit. And laid it right next to where I've seen trail before. And even if they weren't going down this trail, if they were nearby, they would smell this because it was freshly cut, right? And I peeled off some of the bark and stuff like that. It's got a strong smell. And there isn't any evidence whatsoever of any feeding going on with this. It is immaculate. I mean, this is just a trick to bring them around, right? You bring them around and well, put it another way. If there's no tracks, there's no snow, and you don't have like a known trail that's reliable. I don't snare here every year, but this is a spot definitely I recall. I know this spot. There's a weird sort of tipped over tree here. It's like a doorway, right? So it's kind of an obvious spot. And I just know the area here. Everything's super familiar to anyway. This is a place where it's very sort of dense in there, and there's a lot of sort of rabbit country type stuff. And this is a place I've seen all kinds of rabbit tracks in the past and snared rabbits here. And I've set all this food out, and it's been out for 3, maybe even 4 days, and nothing. I mean, I'm starting to think that maybe this is just one of those crash years, right? The rabbit population crashes every 7 to 10 years, depending on, who you're talking to or what literature you're reading, right? So maybe this is one of those years. Who knows, right? But yeah, this is really strange. I'm really curious to see some of my more reliable snaring spots to see if there's anything in those. There's a saying in the trapping world, and I'm not a trapper, but I've heard it said, the best sets are resets. So here's a place I basically have gotten rabbits many times. So in the sense, this is a reset because I've gotten rabbits here before, and the snare was flipped up. See, it was tipped up and pushed out of the way. All right, something came along and got a piece of it. So I just have to reestablish the snare as best as possible. I remember this one being a bit difficult. Didn't want to sort of set. It's a bit small, but anyway, not quite sure why this one didn't work, why it failed. But all you can do is reset and hope for the best. I'll just put it a little bit higher. Maybe it was too low. So I just put a little bit higher. That's all you can do. All right. But anyway, there was definitely one here because I was pushed out. I mean, that could have been a squirrel, could have been a partridge, grouse, whatever. All kinds of possible explanations for why that snare was pushed up and out of the way. But the most likely thing is that a rabbit ducked under it and pushed it up because it was literally pushed up. So I'll just put a little bit more of this moss here. I could use what they call a chin lifter just to stick the sort of a post, but I find this moss works just as well. And it's very natural, right? It's what they're sort of used to encountering. So I'll give that a go, see what happens. Here's another spot that I've had luck with in the past. Actually, one year I got a black rabbit here. But you can see there's a dropping right there. All right, and there's another one on the other side. So they are using that. It's relatively fresh. You can tell by the color, right? This is sort of green, light brown, and the darker it gets, I mean, this is generally speaking, right? The older it is. I can see a couple older ones Right, there's some older ones there that are broken down, falling apart. Anyway, this is always a good spot, so why not set one here? And this is in that place that I called the safe spot. Basically that spot that seems kind of safe. But I noticed something when I was looking around here. Very strange. Check this out. So, just walking around with my head down, you know, sort of scanning. And where'd it go? Yeah, here. Look at that. Maybe not so safe. I'm guessing that's from a deer, because it's too big to be anything or a man, right? But something. There's a lot of deer sign. You know, if I was a bear or a coyote, this would be a good place to sort of wait for the deer to show up, because there's at least 6 or 7 piles of deer poop around here right now. Also, I have a snare over here, and this is why you need to check your snares every, you know, at least every day, every other day. So I was curious. This has always been a good spot. So just to make sure it was still a good spot, I laid down a whole bunch of, this is maple, okay, not birch, but maple. And you can see it's been freshly bitten off, right? Right, many of them are freshly bitten off. And they're bitten off by a rabbit. It's a clean, sharp break. Not chewed off like a deer, ground off. But it looks like something took, you know, pruning shears to that, which is the way the rabbit takes them off. Look, they took this one here, right, a little bit higher. This is about almost 3 feet high. Didn't take this one. But they could. They would just push it down with their paws and get to it. They know how to do that. There's some buds left here. Maybe they'll be back tonight for some more. But anyway, right next to those, I had a snare here. And it is completely gone. This is the stick the snare was attached to. And that's why I do that, in case the stick gets pulled out, you don't know. I can see a little bit of fur right there. Right, so my guess is that a rabbit got in here and it basically met its end. And then a coyote or a wildcat or something came along and took it. There's nothing for them to break that wire. I mean, they just yank and yank and yank until it lets go. That's my best guess. Because if a rabbit had actually freed itself from struggling, there's a lot of evidence of the struggle. This whole setup here would be really messed up, and there'd be a lot of hair, and it, you know, just looked like something met a very, really, you know, horrible end. Let's put it that way, right? If they're not snared, if they're snared around the neck, they usually die pretty quickly, just like you or I would. You know, it's being choked out. If you watch mixed martial arts, it, you know, once the choke is properly applied, it doesn't take long to put a person to into the long sleep. When a snare doesn't go around the neck, goes around the body, the rabbit does not die. It basically either freezes to death from the elements, or it is attacked by something because it's making noises, struggling. Maybe there's some, maybe it's cut itself, lacerated itself. There's a smell of blood in the air, and so on and so forth. And I don't see much any sign of that. From the looks of things, it just died, and something got a free lunch, which is really frustrating because I'm having a heck of a hard time pulling rabbits out of the woods. Anyway, I'm going to reset because this is obviously a good spot. I'll take that bit of rabbit fur out of the way. I'm going to reset a snare here. Here's something interesting. So this is a spot that I identified as an obvious rabbit trail, and something appears to have sprung my snare. You can see it's narrow there, like something got in it and got out of it. That could be a rabbit, or it could be a squirrel. Who knows, right? This snare's been here for a week. I got to reshape this a bit, get the original circular shape back. But I got to reset this. But something definitely came through here and got in there, but also got out. So it could be a squirrel trail, but boy, it looks like a rabbit trail to me. And I'll reset this and we'll check out the next one. Here's another snare set at a really reliable spot. where I've gotten snares year after year, or rabbits here year after year after year. And I did not set any here last year. I gave this a break. It's the first year I've given it a break since I moved here. It's really weird that there's just no sign of anything here. I'm gonna have to lay some birch boughs down just to see if there's anything here at all, because this is totally bizarre. Either they found another way around this little narrow pass that's so, I mean, it's basically a tipped log. It's like a rabbit snaring dream of a spot, and it's always been reliable. And I have another snare down there about 20 feet. You can't see it from the camera, but and there's been times I come out here and have one in both. Even one year I had a partridge in the snare down there. Oh, rough grouse. Anyway, totally confused. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to put a couple birch tips down here just to see if there's anything nibbling on them, just to get a sense of what on earth is going on here. The only thing I can think, I mean, I haven't been here for 3 days, and neither of these snares have been moved or touched or tipped or anything. And this is one of the best spots I've always had. It's a really, really, really well-defined trail. I'm mystified. Anyway, I haven't been out for 3 days. This is like day 4 of that sort of stretch. So this is, I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I've checked the snares, but I haven't been out for a number of days. Anyway, it's not been so successful yet, but that's, I mean, it's always good to get out in the woods, just get out for a walk and look things over. I don't understand why even the reliable spots aren't turning up anything. I mean, people that are watching that don't have a lot of experience with this might be saying, well, you must have killed them all. I mean, it just does not work that way. You can reduce a population in a given year. If there's a lot of hunting pressure on a particular area, you can reduce the population there, but you're not going to wipe it out. It just doesn't work that way. A handful of them always make it. And even if you clear out, let's say, a space, which is virtually impossible, other ones move in. They just breed and breed and breed and breed. A female rabbit, I don't know how many it can bear, but if all the rabbits in an area are wiped out and there's just a handful left, the females that are left, instead of having 1 or 2 children per brood, and I think they can have 4 broods a season, because the population's been reduced, that means there's more food available for that female. And if the population's been reduced, it means that the predator population gets reduced too. So basically, the females that make it through a bad year, they have plenty of food because there's not a lot of other rabbits competing with them for it. Not a lot of predation. So they're very big and very healthy, and they have large broods, right? So the population just keeps going. Okay, so this is just mystifying. The only thing I can think is that this is one of those crash years, which, you know, I've been here for 10 years. Maybe this is it. Who knows? Because it's been, you know, I've just been out too many times for this spot in particular should have yielded something by now, even if the snare was pushed out of the way, something, right? So anyway, that's today's trip. I might roll this footage in with another video. Just so I can get, you know, make a decent video of it. Hopefully, get a video of something in a snare. So we'll see in a day or so. All right, it's the next day, and I'm about, I don't know, 1/4 through checking the snares, and I've got what I like to call a Houdini rabbit, and for some reason, I sort of enjoy these challenges. So I got a spot here. This is a spot that I've, you know, snared in almost year after year after year. Last year I didn't. I just gave it a break, but usually it's a place I always set a snare, and it's just a good place. And there's a spot here where a trail goes, and normally they go through here as well. That's why I've got one set up. But the strange thing is that this snare has been picked up and pushed out of the way. Something lifted this up and moved it. It was basically up like that when I got here, right? So it's basically the head, whatever came through here, ducked under and pushed it up. Now, that could be a squirrel or a partridge, but this is such a consistent rabbit spot, and I'm inclined to think it's a rabbit. But the confusing thing is that I always have 2 snares here, because if they miss this one, they tend to go in here. But this one has not been moved at all. It's exactly the way I left it. and it still bears the sign of a well-used trail. So I'm very confused. Like, basically the rabbit came through here and then he went somewhere else. The only thing I can think is he went down my walking path. That's the only theory I've got. And I also, last time I was here, I cut some spruce boughs, because really, not spruce, birch boughs, birch tips, because if there's a rabbit around, they usually can't resist them. I see one end bitten off there, but not a lot of sign of a rabbit. So it's very confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the snare again, maybe constrain it down a little bit more, put a chin lifter in, basically, I don't like the hole to be so small that they're scared of it. But if you find them sort of getting, the term people like to use is cute. It's a term from boxing, meaning hard to hit, hard to catch, hard to get. You know, just a bit quicker and smarter than you. And that's, you know, if this is a rabbit, it's basically gone cute on me, because that's twice I've come out here and this one's been sort of moved, touched, but nothing's worked. So I'm going to close it in a little bit more, and I'm also going to put some birch tips really close to the opening here, because if there's rabbit activity, I'm going to put it basically right in the path where they're going to come through here. They're you know, it pushed up this way, so the rabbit came from over there, right? So I'm going to put a nice meal on either side just to see, just to confirm that it's a rabbit. Sure, I could set up a trail cam and all that sort of stuff, but you know, when you've got a 3 kilometers of snares set out, you're not going to put a trail cam in every strange place. It's easier just to put a few birch tips out and see if they get eaten. If they do, you've got reasonable confidence that it's a rabbit. So let me reset this here, and I'll show you what we got after I'm done. All right, so I got a cute rabbit here. I've repaired the snare. I'm going to show you that in a second. I've basically made the snare more flat and wide than perfectly circular. Some people argue that the rabbit's whiskers go laterally, and they're much more sensitive to things touching their whiskers than their ears, and that if something touches their whiskers, that's when they back out and mess around a little bit. So I've done that. I'll show you that in a second. But here I've got this birch here, and this only takes a second, so it's worth doing. This is like a poor man's trail cam. So this is the run here. This is where they walk. So I'm just going to put, you know, they don't have memories like us, right? I mean, they follow a trail. Their brains work differently than ours. So you can sort of, they'll do things that you think is smart, and you'll attribute human qualities to that smartness. But it's mostly instinct. I mean, they're rodents. So they're still clever in their own way, right? But not to disrespect the rabbit. But they're going to come along here and say, ooh, food. I like food. I think I'm going to have a snack, right? That's what's going to happen. This is basically now an alley of food, and it will be undeniably that. I'm just going to take this now and put some of this stuff all over the place. See if I can get just the smell, right? No, the only reason I'm putting this energy in here is that this spot has always been so reliable. I'll just lay the stick right there. All right, so now I still have a rabbit trail that they can easily go through, but there's just a little bit of obstruction with food. And when they go through, they get this set up here, right? Where I've got a little chin lifter. Sometimes I use moss, and if I don't remember what I did here last time, but the moss was gone. So I put a chin lifter in. I got a snare set that's a little bit more flat, and you know, instead of perfectly round, a little more flat round, oval than it was. And I've also fenced it in a little bit better. So really there's only one way through. We'll see what that yields. And you just, all these little adjustments, we're talking, you know, 1/4 inch, 1 centimeter, little changes from the last time, and staying with it. But I'm confident this will probably yield something tomorrow. We'll see. Over here at the other end, where I'm mystified that nothing's gone through here, I think they're jumping right over the whole thing. I think that's what's been happening. So I raised the fence another foot so they can't jump over it. And I made sure to block it off really good in either way. This is a well-used rabbit trail. I'm not hypothesizing here. I've snared them here many times, right? So I think they're either they found another way around it that I can't see. That's possible. Or they're jumping it. Now by putting those birch tips out, get them eating, when they eat, they poop. So even though there's no snow, when they eat those birch chips, they'll leave a little trail of pellets, usually. That should help me get a sense of what they're doing and where they're going, right? Anyway, I'll check this again next day. Here's that snare I set yesterday, where there's definitely a rabbit sign. See a little pellet. It looks like nothing went through here last night, but that's just one night. We'll see what tomorrow brings. But anyway, and I'm gonna put a couple birch tips here just to you know, get a sense of what's going on, basically. Because there's no tracks, right? There's no snow, so you can't see what's happening. So at least with the birch tips, you get an indication that most likely a rabbit is around. And if the birch tip's near your snare and they ate the birch tip and they're not in your snare, you got to reset it somehow. But this should work. I mean, I've got them in this spot before, so it should work. Here's the snare where basically a rabbit had been caught and stolen by a coyote or a wildcat or something. And here's the reset I did yesterday. No activity here. I really can't tell. I laid some of these maple tips down and they all got, you know, eaten pretty well. But I can't tell if more has been eaten since yesterday or not. So I've added a birch tip here to the equation, right? There's the little snaring hole. Just got it sort of sticking out such that when they wander by, perhaps they'll notice it. I got the stick here all peeled, some smell. Maybe that'll get their attention. Remember, this is all happening at night, right? So things aren't as obviously contrived as they are right now. And also, you know, the rabbit can't tell a stick that's been chewed by a porcupine from a stick that's been whittled by a man with a knife. They just, you know, sometimes we attribute too much intelligence to these things. Maybe I'm not attributing enough. But anyway, these are all these little tricks I've done for years. So part of the challenge of snaring with snow, you just don't have the story of what happened left behind in the snow. So you have to be clever in figuring out other ways to solve the problem. Here's a spot where I've gotten rabbit year after year. No sign of anything here. I sort of blocked off alternative trails. They might be going around this. I did a little bit of scouting around here, and I did find, where is it now? Look, right there. Rabbit poop. That's not fresh, right? That might be a few months old. But basically, along this is the trail here. And along this trail, look, there's fresh sign of, that was freshly groomed. Look, see a little stick was groomed off there, right? So you can see fresh sign of grooming. And if you follow the trail along, you can find more rabbit poop. Right, here's the spot over here where there's a whole bunch laid down. Of course, it's old, right? So it's really, really curious here. Don't know what's happened in this spot. Perhaps they're going around this structure. Perhaps they're going, maybe they're going through here. It does look a little bit worked down. Maybe this is the new hole. That's very possible. That could be. Does look, it has a certain look to it. You see, you can't tell these things without the snow. But how about I do that? Right? How about I just, there's some stuff kicking around here. How about I just close off? And they're not like deer. They don't get all spooked by things in the same way. I mean, they can get spooked, but not Not in the same way, let's put it that way. Anyway, I'll close that off. Okay, so now that's closed off. Hopefully they'll come back, they'll go back to using their old route, right? I've got a nice piece of birch tip there. I put that down yesterday. I don't see any sign. It's even got a couple little buds on it, right? Anyway, I put that down yesterday. I don't see any sign of the rabbits working on it. This is definitely a birch tree, and I know because I've used tips from this tree before at this very spot to entice the rabbits. Here's the stick I sort of peeled. Put that there. But if they come along, they're gonna smell that, be aware of it, and see what happens. Anyway, that's it for today. It's a Sunday, and I go back to work tomorrow. But right now, the rule is I have 2 days a week I can work from home, and I'm not even sure, given the numbers in the pandemic, I might just be working from home every single day. And I get off work at 4 p.m. That means that I've got about an hour of light at the end of each day. So I can continue to check these, right? So I can leave these out, which is good because I've only gotten one after an entire week of snaring, which is probably the worst I've ever done. So, I mean, I technically got 2, but one of them was sort of, you know, taken by a coyote or a wildcat or whatever, right? So yeah, 1 and 2 with an asterisk beside it. But anyway, that's done. I've got about, at this point now, I've got at least a dozen snares out, which is still not a lot. But I'm not looking to get a whole bunch. I'm looking to get about a half dozen, maybe a few more for our relatives and that sort of thing. Yeah, this is definitely the driest year I've ever seen. And sure, there's no snow and it makes snaring harder, but only half my snares are in like new runs that, you know, I've identified just from sign and reading things. And one of those snares is the one that's given me the rabbit. The snares I've set in runs where I've always had success, I got nothing. So it's really, really hard to figure out. But it's fun. You know, I still like coming out, trying to solve the riddle, reading the sign, looking for things like that. And I think it's good as a teaching tool for those wanting to learn this to understand that they're, you know, even when you're, I mean, okay, you could possibly see what I'm doing here and say, well, this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. That's possible, but you just have to believe me that I've been doing this for a while, and I'm not having success just because it just seems like a weird year. I don't know what the heck's going on. That happens, right? So anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to put maybe 2 or 3 checking sessions into one video so I can get a decent, you know, 20-minute sort of deal out of that. All right, see you in the next one. Hey, all right, so it's 2 days after the last video. I was not able to get out yesterday. There's a narrow window of time when I'm working from home right now. I finish work at 4, and there's a really narrow window of time for me to get out and check the snares before it gets dark. And I don't want to be out in the woods in the dark. It's got a headlamp and a backup headlamp. But it's just very treacherous walking, as you've seen in the videos where I'm sort of filming the walking part. And there's a lot that can go wrong when it gets dark. And things look different when it's dark, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I got about an hour of light, and I already blew 10 minutes of it on the phone talking to someone. So it's a very short amount of time. I'm walking very fast, which is also dangerous. Trying to get back to the house before it gets dark. So anyway, I've already checked 2 snares. The snare where I got a rabbit, my first rabbit in this year, and where I'd set a second snare, nothing there, no sign of any action whatsoever. Here I am at this spot where this snare was basically pushed out of the way last time, and I put a whole bunch of birch boughs here to see if something came along. If a rabbit came along, it wouldn't be able to resist them. There's no sign of anything eating these, and nothing's been through there since. So either the rabbit that was there hasn't come back, or it was a squirrel and it doesn't care less about these birch tips. Who knows? Let's check the next snare. There's one right over here, so I might as well just keep the camera rolling. See if there's anything happening there. Nothing. And I mean, I've got rabbits here before. This is a productive spot, and there's rabbit sign here, and the trail is got no sign of having been shut down, so that's confusing. Anyway, off to the next spot. Here we are at the spot with fresh rabbit poop last time. That's 2 days ago, and this is where I caught the black rabbit a number of years ago. There is a rabbit here, but no sign that he or she was here last night or the night before. Snare is exactly as I left it. And these little birch chips I threw out just to see if something was coming along. Also, no sign of any activity. Now, it just could mean they weren't moving through here the last 2 nights. That's all it might mean. Let's check. I got another snare right next to here, so let's check that out. It's just right over here. This is the nice place that wasn't so nice for this deer here that lost what looks like a femur here, a leg bone. But anyway, let's check over here. The snare ride lost a rabbit. That is to say, there was a rabbit here, but something came along and ate it while I wasn't checking my snares. That snare's immaculate. And I've put a couple birch tips down here just to see, you know, like almost like with the poor man's trail cam. Nothing at those. So basically, as far as I can tell, there was just nothing happening here the last 2 nights. A little bit windy here. This is the windy spot where all the trees are blown down, but this is the only good spot because I'm high up here. It's a bit of a view to show you what I'm dealing with in terms of light. That's what's left. The sun has gone below the horizon. That's just the sun reflecting off the clouds. So I'm not far from home now, but I've got, you know, maybe 20 minutes before it's just dark. And given that it's basically overcast, so there will be no real moonlight or starlight or anything like that. Once 20 minutes has gone by, it's going to be dark, dark, dark. Now I've only got this trail, the snare line is on about a 3-kilometer loop, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're going over this sort of terrain, right, it's you know, it just feels like a lot more. You really gotta be careful. It's important to have the old walking stick along, much more important than the shotgun. And the speed I'm going, I'm not going to see anything anyway. A rabbit would have to literally run into my arms for me to have any. I'm just moving as fast as I can safely over this, you know, over this sort of terrain, right? Anyway, I got a couple more chairs, a couple more snares to check. I'll be with you in a few minutes. Boy, this is amazing. So this is just another spot where in previous years I've put snares down, and I didn't bother to put any out. I just put some of these birch chips from a yellow birch down, and no sign of feeding, just nothing. I mean, I'm amazed. There's just doesn't seem to be anything happening in these woods. I mean, these have been here for 2 nights. This is a place where if you look around, you'll see a little bit of rabbit poop here and there, and they usually cross. I just know the spot. There's a big rock there, and they tend to come across and go over there. They cross around here. And I mean, if they're around, they'd smell this freshly cut stuff, you know, sort of bend it up a little bit. And, you know, I mean, some of you that maybe watch hunting videos on TV and don't hunt a lot, you'll think, well, you're touching with your hands, you've got your scent on it. But, you know, those scent products that they sell, that's just hocus pocus. You know, the old timers never used any of that stuff. You know, I got an uncle that's, I don't know how many deer he's shot, but he's never used any of that stuff. You don't need that stuff. You know, they don't, sure, the animals are sensitive to scent, but not as sensitive as the people selling you that scent mask stuff would have you believe. Also, you're out there breathing and farting and all that other stuff. I mean, it doesn't matter what you spray on your body. You've got breath smell, you've got fart smell, you've got body odor to some extent, right? I mean, the idea that spraying something on your clothing is going to mask the scent that emanates from you is preposterous. Just one man's opinion anyway. I don't think it's worth the money. Well, it's another day with nothing. I checked every snare. I got about 12 out right now, and I got nothing. I mean, if I was more serious and more, you know, hardcore, I'd have 20 or 30 out, that sort of thing. But in this loop, that I have here, this 3-kilometer loop, there's only enough good spots from my experience. I mean, I'm basically, aside, there might be a half a kilometer of this loop that's sort of like new area, which is where I got the new rabbit. Other than that, you know, I've put snares where I've had success before, and yeah, just not happening. I'm just mystified because I basically gave all those spots a break last year and snared somewhere else. So if, you know, you'd expect it to come back, right? But clearly I'm not having much of an impact on the population here. It's more the predator prey food dynamic that's driving things, I'd have to expect. But anyway, great to be out, even though I only had not a lot of time. I mean, I had less than an hour of light to work with, and 3 kilometers of rough woods to deal with. And I'm about 5 minutes from home right now, and it's pretty much a straight line, so pretty hard to get lost. Not much light left. There's much better light here than in the sort of thick forest. But man, I mean, I spent the entire day sitting at a desk, looking out the window, longingly at this forest. So it's good even for a short amount of time. Just get out, get a good, you know, vigorous sort of hike in. I'm going to need a shower when I get back, and just check everything to see what's going on. Unfortunately, nothing's going on, but anyway, we'll see on the next one. I'll probably roll this into another video as well, because I don't think these 2 checks have really yielded up enough to wrap a video around. So we'll see you in the next one. Hey, so it's the next day, and it's actually the day before a big storm. And like yesterday, I haven't got a lot of light to work with. I got about an hour of light, and I'm moving fast. But I thought I'd stop and show you quickly. I'm checking my snares, but I'm also putting them sort of up in the trees. We're gonna get about, I think, 15 centimeters of snow. That's like half a foot tonight or tomorrow. I'd like to leave the snares out tonight because it's beautiful right now. It's sunny and nice. It was pouring rain this morning, but now it's like a nice, actually feels like March 31st, even though it's like the first week of January. It should be freezing right now, but it isn't. Look, I brought gloves, and I brought the thinnest little gloves. Normally this time of year I've got wool mitts, and like another pair, either had 2 pairs of wool mitts or wool mitts with leather mitts over top, right? So it's very, very warm today, and we're supposed to get a big snowstorm tonight or tomorrow. And then it's going to drop down to, like, I think the low is -19 for a couple days. And then it'll go back to like 0. But I honestly think that snow will probably stick around. So then we'll really know what's going on around here. All the indications, having been snaring for about 2 weeks now, are that the population has just crashed here and there's hardly anything. These 2 snares here, this is where I got the first rabbit, the only rabbit. No sign of action at all. Anyway, let me show you what a great system this is in terms of maintaining. I mean, this would be ideal, more ideal to show you if I was actually getting rabbits. But I'm not giving up. You know, maybe, I don't know, I'm just curious to see what's going on out here because I've never seen it like this. So I'm going to keep the snares out, but I got to get them up off there's no point right now. They're just going to get buried in snow. So I'll show you what I do. So because these aren't like attached to fixed trees, right? I got a nice snare here. And if you work with wire, you know, it really is finicky. And once you frig up the circle, it's impossible to unfrig, or virtually. I'll have to start all over again. So I just pull this out of the ground, and I just, you know, just sort of set it. I find 2 branches among the trees where I can set it like that. Right, so it's up in the air now. It's underneath the trees. It might get some snow and stuff like that on it, but it should be all right like that, right? So then after the snow settles down, I'll wait a couple days, let some tracks set up. I'll come back out here and just stick that back in the ground. Right, there's one over here as well. Right, so I just remove that. See how easily it comes out? You got to be really careful when you're pulling this out, not to mess up your, don't mess up your circle. There we go. Okay, don't let anything pull on it. Right, and I'll put that, it right next to this guy. Oops, don't touch the circle. I'll put a little higher in the tree. up here like this. I mean, this is a good spot, so I'll come back. So I got one here, got one there, right? Nothing's not gonna bother anything up there like that. Underneath the little bit of canopy there. And yeah, these will be basically ready for when the snow settles out. And I'm gonna reset, they'll be all ready for that. All right, let's go to the next spot. All right, so I just come out of a thick wood and gone uphill, oh, maybe 50 meters or something like that. Kind of like climbing a small hill sort of thing, right? A little bit out of breath, but anyway, I wanted to show you this spot here. So this is the area I identified in the previous video where everything is blown down, and everything is always blowing down. Look, here's a tree. So here's a tree. It was growing on that rock. So it doesn't take much for a tree. It was a birch tree. It wasn't even a big birch tree, but it basically blew over because it was just growing on a rock, somehow getting what it needed from a rock. Anyway, the whole thing blew over. That's the root ball, right? And so this whole area, so that tree wasn't, you know, I don't know, 10 years old. I mean, you can see it. It was 20 feet high at the most, at the very top of the tips, right? So probably interesting. Let's have a look at the base. There should be signs, because I mean, that is a birch tree. There should be signs of feeding, of heavy feeding, of tips being gnawed off. I don't see anything, nothing. I mean, this should be a hive of activity. This should be like if you were hunting, the ideal spot. Like one guy stands back, the other guy kicks the tree, and the rabbits run out. And I don't see any sign of much going on with the lower branches, the tips. They're all intact. Anyway, what I wanted to show you is just, this is, I've cut a trail through this. Just come out here with an axe and a saw, bashing everything I could to get through. Look, you can see this is a tree that had fallen down. I had to cut that end off. This is all done with my silky saw. Right, another tree here. Cut it, tipped it over. Right, another spot here. Had to cut it. I mean, I did this a number of years ago, right? But this is what's required. I mean, look, just look over here. Look at all these shin busters. Knee high, knee high, knee high, waist high over there. Right, so all that stuff sort of has to be removed out of the way so I can get a little path. So what I've got here is just a little path that I poked through this, right, using an axe. The axe I showed you, the sort of ideal axe, that sort of thing, and a saw. I use the saw for cutting things mostly, but the axe is, so like here's one I had to cut with the saw, just so much easier. And the axe is used to just smash things that are in the way. I find it much more useful that when you have both. Right, here's one that just wasn't worth removing. I can get over that. Not a big deal to step over that. Right, here's one here. That would have been cut with an axe. It was probably anything that seems semi-rotten that I can blow through with a couple strokes of the axe. That's what I do. Here's one side of it. Basically, there was a tree going across here about waist to chest high height. I cut it there and just let that drop where it was. Nothing to step over that, right? And that's the sort of work. Basically, like, I call this the hallway because it allows me to get through an area of this forest that's otherwise unpassable, and it's like a shortcut, right? I have a huge loop, and this little hallway here bisects the loop, and I really didn't have to do a lot of work. Oh, look, here's another one I went through with an axe, right? Just get through it, let it go down, just so that it's not so much of an obstacle, right? That way, if you're out here at a weird time of day, and the light's not so good, it's not so bad. This one's a bit high, but it's just too much work to remove it. You know, you can only do so much. So there's a little spot here where I got a couple logs to go over. But other than that, it's pretty easy. I mean, once in a while, this doesn't look like a path, but it is. Because if I didn't, basically this is the only way through here where you haven't got, you know, hip high, knee high, waist high trees everywhere. This is the only way through it. Right? And once you punch a hole through terrain like that, no one's going to find your trail because it's just not obvious like an ATV trail. But it just makes the whole thing easier to deal with. Now, I used to have a way through here, but this darn tree fell down. And the traditional path is through this way, but it's, you know, and I remember feeling bored, I can come out and do that with, you know, a bow saw or something, but for now, I just step 6 feet to the right, and I'm back on my trail. And the area where I've got my other snares is just around the corner here. There's another spot where I had to make a hallway. Look how dark it is in here, right? Because we haven't got a lot of light left. It's like a little hallway. An alley. Right now it opens up again. And this is usually good rabbit country here. I've actually seen them here sometimes at this time of day. But not when I'm walking around making all this noise, talking on camera. So here's the spot where I say I always have good luck and everything always works. This is one of the most reliable spots. There is no sign of anything eating these birch tips, and my snare is completely nothing. Nothing's going on there. So I'll pull that out. Yeah. Protecting the circle, right? And I'll just stick that. We got a little crack in the tree here. So I'll just stick it in there like that. That'll be fine like that. For when I'm out next time, I got another one over here. Beautiful set. This should be successful. This should be giving me results. Hasn't given me nothing. And I'm gonna pull that out. Yeah. So I'll just set it in this tree over here. And hopefully that'll be okay for overnight, and I'll be able to find it the next day. It's very close to where I had the set. Right? Off to the next one. Well, it's another hasty trip. Hasty 3-kilometer hike through the woods. And nothing. Unbelievable. No sign, no nothing. I can't believe it. I mean, when I started this series, the goal was not for people to watch me get nothing and be optimistic about it. But that's the first. I mean, I've lived here for 10 years. And it's the first year I've ever seen anything like this. It's amazing. Anyway, I think I'll put this all together in a video, even though I like to have a video with some success in it. But, you know, I got to think long and hard about whether I want to continue in this area. I mean, I've been listening to other guys. I find it hard to believe that a population crash would happen province-wide. I have to think it's localized to particular ecosystems. I could be wrong with that. Really have to talk to a biologist who studies this sort of thing. But yeah, the snares are still out there. They're just not set, and they're waiting to be reset. I'm curious to see, once we've had some snow down and it's stayed down, maybe they've just gone somewhere else. Maybe the population's strong somewhere else in the area. But boy, it doesn't look like anything's happening. The birch boughs that I've put down, every single location, there's no sign of feeding. And these are locations where normally that sort of thing would draw things in. You'd see sign. That's why I did it, right? So it's really hard to wrap your head around. But I'll take a couple days off, let the snow come down, maybe let some trails establish themselves. Once we can see tracks, we'll get a better sense of what's going on, and take it from there. Anyway, that's where we are. I mean, what can you do about it? But I'm going to take a couple days off, let the snow come down, let the trails reestablish themselves, and go out and have a look and see what's going on, and maybe reassess. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Click the bell if you want to be notified when I make new videos. And until next time, enjoy the outdoors on the cheap. Thanks for watching. Well, I'm back at the house, and I thought I'd share this beautiful sunset with you. And also just to comment on the old saying, red skies by night, the sailor's delight. That's a red sky. But tomorrow is not going to be a sailor's delight. We're getting a wicked storm and lots of snow. You know, these old sayings, old rules of thumb don't always hold up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. This red sky is not going to be a sailor's delight.